They mocked me at the barbecue. Days later, my sister sent me her resume. Clapperboard opening hook. My sister laughed the loudest. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not my uncle's comment, not the cousins who joined in, my sister, who had known me my whole life, who had shared a bedroom with me for 16 years, who was supposed to be the one person in that backyard who knew what those words cost me. She laughed the loudest. I was holding a paper plate with potato salad on it. I remember that specifically. The potato salad. Because I had been looking down at it when my uncle made the joke, something about my job, something about how it was cute that I was trying, something about how maybe someday I'd work my way up to a real career, and when the laughter started I had kept looking at the potato salad like it contained an answer. It didn't. I set the plate down on the folding table. I walked to the end of the garden. I stood with my back to everyone and I looked at the fence and I breathed. 7 days later, my sister sent me her resume with a message that said, "I heard you're hearing. Can you put in a word?" I read it 3 times. Then I opened my laptop and I started typing. Part 1: The family that built you wrong. My name is Samir Uyghur, and I want to tell you something about the family I grew up in before I tell you what happened at the barbecue, because the barbecue makes more sense if you understand the foundation. We were a large family in the specific South Indian way. Not just parents and siblings but an ecosystem. Aunts and uncles who had opinions, cousins who were benchmarks, a grandmother who had not updated her rubric for success since approximately 1987 and was not interested in revising it. Sunday gatherings that were warm and loud and full of food, and also underneath all of that, subtly competitive in the way of families who love each other and also cannot stop measuring. My father was an engineer. My uncle, his brother, was a doctor. My older sister Divya had done her MBA and gone into finance and was, by family consensus, doing exactly what was expected and being appropriately praised for it. She was 32, I was 28, and the 4 years between us had always felt more like a decade in terms of the family's assessment of our respective trajectories. I had not done engineering. I had not done medicine. I had done something that the family collectively referred to as the internet thing, with a mixture of affection and mild confusion that had over years curdled slightly into condescension. What I had actually done was study computer science, work for 4 years at a mid-sized tech company learning everything I could about product development and team management, and then 18 months before the barbecue, start my own company. The company built software tools for small businesses. Specifically, tools that help small retail and food businesses manage inventory, track sales, and understand their customer data without needing a dedicated IT department. It was unglamorous, intensely practical, and I say this not as a boast but as a fact necessary for the story growing at a rate that had started attracting serious attention. The family did not know this. Not because I was hiding it, because nobody had asked. The barbecue was my uncle's annual thing, a late summer gathering in his garden in the Pune house, the whole extended family, the cousins who came from Bangalore and Mumbai and one who came from London specifically for this, the food that took 2 days to prepare, the specific social ecosystem of 40-odd people who shared DNA and the complicated intimacy that comes with it. I had arrived on Saturday afternoon with my bag and the specific internal preparation I always did before family gatherings, a kind of quiet settling, a decision to be present and warm and not to need anything from the room that the room was not going to give. The first few hours had been fine. Good, even there were cousins I genuinely liked, there was food that deserved its reputation, there was my grandmother who still called me by my childhood nickname and whose unconditional warmth was one of the most reliable things in my life. The incident happened at around 7 when the evening had settled and the food was done and people were standing in clusters with drinks, the particular relaxed looseness of a gathering where the formal part is over. My uncle had started talking about careers. This was a recurring feature of these gatherings. My uncle's favorite topic was the taxonomy of success, specifically who had achieved it and in what order and by what measure. He was not malicious. He was a man who had built his life by a specific set of rules and genuinely believed those rules were universal. He had got to me eventually. "Samir," he had said in the fond, slightly pitying tone he reserved for me, "still doing the startup thing?" "Yes," I had said. "How's that going?" Not really a question, more of a stage set. "Good," I had said, "growing." A smile. "That's nice," he had said. "You know, it's okay if it doesn't work out, there's no shame in going back to a proper job, lots of good companies are always hiring." And then he had turned to his son, my cousin Rahul, who had recently been promoted at his consulting firm, and said something congratulatory about Rahul's new title. And the laughter had started, not cruel exactly, more the easy laughter of people who have found a shape that fits the moment. A few cousins, an aunt, someone whose name I didn't register. And Divya. Divya had laughed, not loudly, not ostentatiously, but clearly, the laugh of someone who found the moment genuinely amusing. I had looked at the potato salad. I left early the next morning, told my grandmother I had work, which was true, and drove back to Mumbai before anyone else was properly awake. I stopped at a dhaba on the highway and had chai and sat in the car for a while watching trucks go past. I want to be clear, devastated. I had experienced versions of this for years, and I had the particular resilience of someone who has been underestimated consistently and has learned to use that underestimation as fuel. I was not broken by the barbecue. But I was tired. Tired in the deep way, the accumulated way, the way that is not about one incident but about the sum of all the incidents, the weight of years of being the family's gentle ongoing joke. I drove back to Mumbai. I went to my office. I worked. The company had 12 employees at that point. We had just closed a funding round that I had not publicly announced yet, a Series A that had come through after 6 months of conversations and due diligence and the particular anxiety of not knowing until you know. The announcement was scheduled for the following week. On the 7th day after the barbecue, while I was in the middle of preparing the announcement, my phone showed a message from Divya. Hey, I heard through Rahul that you're expanding and hearing. I've been thinking about making a move from my current firm. Can you look at my resume and put in a word with your HR? I read it 3 times. Then I put my phone down. Then I picked it up and read it again. Part 2, the city and the company. Before I tell you what I wrote back to Divya, and I will tell you, I promise, I need to tell you about Aryan. Because Aryan is why this is a love story and not just a revenge story, and the love story is the one that matters. Aryan Kapoor had come to work for me 8 months before the barbecue. He was 26, 2 years younger than me, and he had applied for the product lead position with a portfolio that was, I remember thinking when I first reviewed it, almost aggressively good. Not polished in the way of someone who had been coached to present well, but good in the underlying way. The thinking was clear, the decisions were justified. The products he had worked on showed evidence of someone who cared about whether the thing actually worked for the people using it. I had interviewed him myself. This was still the stage where I interviewed everyone. The company was small enough that every hire was significant, and I had not yet delegated the process. He had come in on a Tuesday afternoon. He was tall, slightly awkward in the physical way of someone whose brain moves faster than his body has fully accommodated, with the kind of dark eyes that were always in the middle of thinking about something. He had sat across from me and had, within about 7 minutes, disagreed with one of my product decisions that he had seen in a demo version of our software. Not aggressively, not to show off. He had just said matter-of-factly, "This flow doesn't work for the user you're describing. The checkout process has 3 steps that could be 1, here's why." And then he had explained, clearly and concisely, exactly why. He was right. I had looked at him across the table for a moment. "Can you start Monday?" I had said. He had blinked. "Don't you have more questions?" "Do you want me to have more questions?" "I prepared for more questions," he said. "Ask me your questions then," I said. He had good questions about the company's direction, about team culture, about how product decisions were made and who had final authority. Questions that told me more about him than most answers would have. I had hired him on Monday. Working with Aryan was, I discovered over the following months, a specific kind of experience. He was methodical in the way of someone who had learned to be methodical, because his brain naturally went in 17 directions, and the methodology was a structure he had built to manage that. He kept detailed notes, not because he was a note-keeping personality, but because he had found that external documentation freed his working memory for the actual thinking. He arrived before most of the team and left later than most of the team and did not make either of these facts visible or significant. They were simply what the work required, and he did them. He was also, in a way I had not entirely anticipated, funny. Not performing funny, not office social funny. Quietly, precisely funny in the way that some people are, the observation delivered in exactly the right moment with exactly the right understatement. I had laughed, genuinely, more in 8 months of working with him than I could remember laughing in years. The complication, because there was always going to be a complication, was that I was his employer. The company was small. The power differential was real. And I had enough self-awareness to know that the particular quality of my attention when Aryan was in a room was not something I should act on without being very certain about what it was and what it could responsibly become. So I had done what I was good at doing with things I wasn't ready to examine. I had filed it. I had continued to be the founder and CEO and his professional superior. I had let the work be the thing because the work was always there and always honest. The barbecue had happened in this context, in the period when I was carrying the funding news and carrying the thing I was not examining about Aryan and carrying 7 years of family dynamics that had never fully resolved. And then Divya had sent the resume. Part 3, the reply. I thought about it for 3 days. Not about whether to hire Divya, that answer was clear and had been clear from the moment I read the message, but about how to respond, about what I wanted the response to do and not do, about the difference between revenge that is about humiliation and revenge that is about clarity. On the 3rd day I wrote back. Hi Divya, thanks for reaching out. I've looked at your resume, your experience is strong and there are roles in the company that could suit your background. I'd want to be transparent with you about a few things before we go further. First, we're announcing a Series A funding round next week. The company has grown significantly over the last 18 months. Second, I hire on merit, not on connections, so if you come in for an interview it will be a real interview with the full team, same as any candidate. Third, I want you to understand that if you join, I'm your employer, not your brother. The dynamic will be professional, not familial. If those terms work for you, I'll have HR send you the interview details. I read it twice, then I sent it. She replied in 4 minutes, of course, send the details. The announcement went out the following Monday. I want to describe this moment accurately because it matters. The Series A was not enormous by the standards of the largest tech companies, but it was significant, substantial enough to signal that the company was real, that the growth was real, that the internet thing had become something that serious investors had looked at carefully and decided to put serious money behind. The response from the industry was what these announcements produce: coverage in the tech press, congratulations from people in the ecosystem, the specific attention of people who track these things and had now updated their assessment of where we stood. The response from the family was something else. My uncle called that evening. Warm, genuinely warm. He was not a man without warmth, that was never the issue. He said he was proud. He said he had always known I had it in me. He said this without any apparent awareness of the potato salad. My parents called, my mother cried a little. My father said very good 3 times, which is his version of a standing ovation. Divya did not call. She texted, congratulations, big news, looking forward to the interview. I read it and put my phone down and went back to work. Part 4, what Aryan noticed. I want to tell you something about the days around the announcement, because this is where Aryan becomes more than a colleague in the story. He had known about the funding for months. He was product lead and the product roadmap was central to the investor conversations, and I had brought him in early. He had been part of the due diligence process, had presented to investors, had been, in ways that mattered, a significant reason the round had closed. I had not told him what it meant to me personally. That was not information I shared at work with anyone. On the Monday of the announcement, after the news went out and the congratulations started coming in, I had been in my office going through messages when Aryan had knocked on the open door. He came in and put a small plant on my desk, a succulent in a terracotta pot, the kind that requires very little maintenance. You're the least likely person I know to kill this, he said, and you should have something alive on your desk. I looked at the plant, then at him. Thank you, I said. He turned to go. Aryan, I said. He stopped. The product presentation in the Series B preliminary deck, I said. You know the section on user retention metrics. Yes, he said. Investors mentioned it 3 separate times as a deciding factor, I said. I want you to know that. He was quiet for a moment. I know, he said, not boastfully, just acknowledging a fact. You don't always know when your work matters, I said. Sometimes I should say it more directly, this was work that mattered. He looked at me with an expression I could not entirely read, something careful and open at the same time. Thank you, he said and left. I looked at the succulent. I had been keeping the door locked so carefully for so long that I had not noticed it was already slightly open. Part 5 Divya's interview. The interview process took 2 weeks. Divya came in on a Thursday for the first round. She was exactly who she always was: composed, articulate, professionally polished in the way that finance careers produce. She was good in the interview, genuinely good. The panel, 3 people, none of whom were me, came back with a positive assessment. The second round was with me. We sat across from each other in the small conference room, and I conducted the interview the way I would conduct any interview: direct questions, specific scenarios, genuine assessment. I was, I think, neither warmer nor colder than I would have been with a stranger, just professional. At the end, she said, "Can I ask you something off record?" "Yes," I said. "Are you angry with me?" she asked, directly. That was always one of Divya's qualities: she could be direct when it mattered. I looked at her. "No," I said, which was true. "But I want you to understand something. If you come here, every decision about your career, every project assignment, every review, every promotion will be made the same way they're made for everyone. I won't protect you from difficult feedback. I won't give you easier work because you're my sister, and I won't keep you from accountability if you don't perform." She held my gaze. "I know," she said. "Do you?" I said. "Because the version of me that existed at that barbecue was someone you were comfortable laughing at. If that's the version you're picturing when you think about working here, the adjustment is going to be significant." Silence. "I shouldn't have laughed," she said. "No," I said, "you shouldn't have." More silence. "I was embarrassed," she said. "Not of you, of myself. I've been in finance for 6 years and I've watched you build something, and I told myself it was small and it was going to fail because it was easier than admitting I was afraid I'd made the wrong choices." I sat with this. "That's honest," I said. "I'm trying to be," she said. I nodded once. "HR will be in touch," I said. She got the offer, she earned it. She started the following month, and she was, from the first week, exactly what the panel had assessed: competent, hardworking, willing to be uncomfortable in the specific productive way of someone who is learning something genuinely new. She was also, in her first month, visibly humbled by the scale of what she had underestimated. Not publicly, she was too professional for that, but I saw it in the small moments. The meeting where she realized the complexity of the decisions being made daily. The conversation with the engineering team where she understood concretely what the product actually did and who it served. The afternoon she spent shadowing our customer success team on calls with actual small business owners using our software, and came back to my office and said, simply, "I didn't understand what this was." "No," I said. "I do now," she said. I nodded. "Good," I said. Part 6 The Slow Thing. I want to take you back to Aryan now because the story has been circling something that needs to be addressed directly. It had been 9 months since I hired him when the barbecue happened, and in those 9 months I had been so comprehensively focused on the company, the funding round, the team growth, the product development, that I had largely succeeded in keeping the door locked by simply never being still enough to notice it. After the barbecue, something changed. I think it was the potato salad. I think it was the specific combination of standing in a garden feeling invisible to the people who were supposed to see me most clearly, and then driving back to Mumbai and going to an office where the person I was, the real, actual, professional person, was seen daily by everyone around me, including, most clearly, by Aryan. The contrast was too stark to ignore anymore. I started noticing things with a specificity I had been avoiding. The way Aryan ran team stand-ups, not as a formality but as an actual exchange, the way he asked questions that were genuine and listened to the answers. The way he handled disagreement on the team, which was with a direct patience that I found extraordinary. He could hold a position under pressure without becoming brittle, could update his view when the evidence warranted without losing face about it. The way he looked when he was working through a difficult problem, a slight stillness, the world narrowing to the thing in front of him, everything else temporarily irrelevant. I had caught myself watching this more than once and had caught myself catching myself and had looked away and focused on something else. The way he talked about the product's users, not as data points, not as conversion metrics, but as actual people with actual problems that the software was supposed to solve. Once in a product review, he had pulled up a message from a customer, a small textile shop owner in Surat who had written to say the inventory tracking had saved her business during a difficult period, and read it to the team, not to be sentimental, but to make sure everyone remembered what the work was for. I had looked at the table when he read it. Because what I had felt in that moment was not professional appreciation. It was something else, something I was running out of room to keep filed away. The first real crack in my composure came on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after the barbecue. The office had mostly emptied. I was finishing a document. Aryan was at his desk on the other side of the glass partition, visible to me when I looked up, which I had been trying not to do excessively. He was eating dinner at his desk, the specific sad efficiency of a person who has decided that eating and working simultaneously is an acceptable life choice. I went to the kitchen and came back with 2 plates. I set one on his desk. He looked up. "You didn't have to," he started. "You eat like you're trying to hide it," I said. "Take a break." He looked at the plate, then at me. "Are you eating at your desk too?" he said. "I was going to," I said. "That's the same thing," he said. "My desk is bigger," I said. He almost smiled, not quite, almost. "Come eat in the kitchen," he said. "The table is a neutral space that belongs to neither of our productivity guilt." I looked at him for a moment. "5 minutes," I said. We ate in the kitchen for 40 minutes. We talked about the product, about a problem he was working through, about a conversation he'd had with a customer that had given him an idea he wasn't sure about yet. The kind of conversation that starts as professional and becomes something that exists in the space between professional and personal, where the work is still the subject but the people talking are not managing anything, are just talking. At some point I said something about a design choice I had made early in the company that I had since realized was wrong, and he said, "I know, I found it 3 months ago and fixed it." And I said, "You fixed it without telling me." And he said, "I fixed it and put it in the release notes in the weekly report, and you read the weekly report." "I read the weekly report," I said. "The item was in section 3, he said, under minor improvements. You fixed a major architectural issue and put it under minor improvements." "It was a minor fix," he said. "The architecture was the issue, the fix was minor." I looked at him. "That's an important distinction," I said. "Yes," he said, "it is." We looked at each other across the kitchen table. Not for too long, not in the way that would require one of us to say something about it. Just for a moment, the specific moment where two people are aware of the same thing at the same time and neither of them has decided what to do about it. Then he looked back at his food. "Section 3, I said. "Section 3, he confirmed. I looked at my food. Part 7, what the team saw. Here is the thing about being the founder of a 12-person company, there is essentially no privacy. Not in the intrusive sense. The team was professional and respectful and not given to gossip in the destructive way. But in a space that's small with people who worked closely together and were, by and large, perceptive, things were noticed. The quality of attention between people was visible. The specific way I looked when Aryan presented something in a full team meeting was not, I suspect, entirely neutral. I became aware of this through my head of operations, a deeply competent woman named Rhea who had been with me since the beginning and had, over 2 years, developed the kind of relationship with me that involved occasional direct observations that I had not asked for but had learned to take seriously. She came into my office on a Friday afternoon and closed the door, which meant she had something to say that wasn't meeting material. "I'm going to say something," she said. "All right," I said. "It's none of my business," she said. "Usually when people say that, it means they're about to make it their business," I said. "Correct," she said. "Aryan is exceptional, and he is not going to wait indefinitely for a situation to clarify." I looked at her. "I don't know what yours." "Samir," she said. I stopped. "He turned down a competitive offer last month," she said, "from a well-funded startup, significantly higher title, comparable compensation." "How do you know that?" I said. "Because he asked me for a reference and then told me he decided not to go forward," she said. "I asked him why. He said he had things here he wanted to see through." I looked at my desk. "Rhea, I'm not advising you on your personal life," she said. "I'm advising you as your head of operations that a key team member is making career decisions that may be influenced by a situation that the company would benefit from being clearer about." She stood up. "That's it, that's all I'm saying." She went to the door. "Rhea," I said. She turned. "Thank you," I said. She nodded once and left. I sat at my desk for a long time. Part 8, the distance. What I did next was not, in retrospect, my best decision. I created distance. Not dramatic distance, not cold or unkind. Just the specific managed distance of a person who has received information they are not ready to act on and has decided to buy time by making the space between themselves and the relevant person a little wider. I stopped eating in the kitchen on Thursday evenings. I started taking calls during the windows when Aryan typically came by to discuss product questions. I was present in meetings, professional and effective, but I stopped initiating the conversations that existed in the space between work and not work. Aryan noticed? I know he noticed because he was Aryan and he noticed things, and because the specific quality of his presence in my peripheral vision changed, became slightly more careful, slightly more formal, the way someone adjusts when they have registered a temperature change and are responding to it without yet knowing the cause. This went on for 3 weeks. Then Divya, who had been at the company for 5 weeks by this point and had, true to form, learned things quickly, said to me over a Tuesday lunch that she had not been invited to but had joined by sitting down across from me in the kitchen with her own food. Who did you upset? I'm working, I said. You're eating lunch, she said, and you look like someone who has made a decision he already regrets. I looked at her. You've been here 5 weeks, I said. I've known you for 28 years, she said. I know what you look like when you're punishing yourself for something. I ate my lunch. Aryan is good, she said, not as a question. He's the best product person I've worked with, I said. That's not what I meant, she said. I set down my fork. Divya. I laughed at a barbecue, she said. I was wrong, I'm trying to understand things I should have understood earlier. She paused. I'm not asking for details, I'm saying that from the outside, watching you run this company, watching the way things work here, you've built something real. Don't make it smaller than it is because you're afraid. I looked at my sister across the kitchen table. This was a version of Divya I had not encountered before, not the sibling who had laughed, not the professional who had sent the resume. Someone trying imperfectly to do something right. I'm not afraid, I said. She looked at me with the specific expression of someone who has known me for 28 years. Okay, she said, and went back to her lunch. Part 9: The product launch. The first major product launch after the Series A was scheduled for a Thursday in October. We had been building toward it for 4 months, a significant update to the core software, the one that extended our functionality in ways that opened up a new market segment. The launch had been Aryan's project to lead, the full product strategy through execution, and he had run it with the focused competence I had come to rely on entirely. The night before the launch, the team stayed late. This was not required, but it happened anyway, the particular energy of something you have built together approaching the moment when it goes out into the world. People were checking final details, running tests, doing the things you do when you are trying to make sure that the thing you've made works the way you intend. By 11, most of the team had gone. Aryan and I were the last two. He was at his desk, I was in my office. The distance of 3 weeks was still technically in place, but it had frayed slightly over the course of the evening, proximity and shared purpose wearing it down. At 11:30, he knocked on my open door. It's ready, he said. I know, I said, I've been watching the final checks. He stood in the doorway. He was tired, the specific tiredness of 4 months of intensive work coming to an end, but there was something underneath it, something present and alert. Can I ask you something, he said. Yes, I said. Have I done something wrong? I looked at him. No, I said. Because 3 weeks ago something changed, he said. And I've been going through my work, through every interaction I can remember, trying to find what it was, and I can't find it. He was not aggressive about this, not accusatory. He was saying it the way he said things, directly, precisely, because this was the information that was relevant and he needed to establish whether it was accurate. You haven't done anything wrong, I said. Then what happened, he said. I looked at my desk, at the succulent that had been there for 6 weeks and was, true to his prediction, still alive. Aryan, I said. I'm not asking you to tell me something you don't want to tell me, he said. I'm asking because the work is better when we're not being careful around each other, and I'd rather know what the careful is about. I looked at him for a long moment. Close the door, I said. He came in and closed the door and sat in the chair across from my desk and looked at me with those dark eyes that were always in the middle of thinking about something. I got some information 3 weeks ago, I said, that made me realize I had been less professional than I should be. He was still. In what way, he said. In the way of, I said carefully, allowing something that is not professional to affect the way I work. A pause. Something involving the team, he said. No, I said. He held my gaze. Oh, he said. Silence. I was trying to correct it, I said, by creating space, which I now understand was probably more disruptive than the thing I was trying to correct. He looked at the desk between us. Can I say something, he said. Yes, I said. I turned down an offer last month, he said. Ria probably told you, a pause. I turned it down because I have things here I want to see through, that's true. It's also, he stopped, started again. It's also because whatever thing you were trying to create space from, I've been trying to create space from the same thing for about 7 months. The office was very quiet. You're my employee, I said. I know, he said. That's a real thing, I said, not a reason to avoid something but a thing that has to be handled properly, clearly, not managed badly by one person creating distance without explaining why. Agreed, he said. I don't know how to do this correctly, I said. I've been a founder for 3 years and I've made decisions about things I know about. I don't have a framework for this. He almost smiled. You could build one, he said. You're good at building things. I looked at him. The launch is tomorrow, I said. Yes, he said. We should both go home and sleep, I said. Yes, he said. Neither of us moved for a moment. Aryan, I said. Yes, he said. After the launch, I said, when things have settled, I want to have a conversation, a real one, not a managed one, about what this is and how to do it properly. He looked at me for a long moment. After the launch, he said. He stood up, he went to the door. Samir, he said. I looked up. The launch is going to go well, he said. The product is good. I know, I said. Get some sleep, he said. He left. I sat in my office for a while, the city outside the window, the succulent on my desk, the company all around me, the thing I had built while people laughed at the barbecue, the real and solid and irrefutable thing that I had made. I went home, I slept better than I had in 3 weeks. Part 10, the launch and after. The launch went well. Better than well, the response in the first 24 hours exceeded the projections we had modeled, the kind of early signal that tells you the product is solving the problem you thought it was solving for the people you thought had it. The team celebrated in the way that small companies celebrate. Someone brought food. There was genuine noise, the relief and pride of something you made going out and being received. Aryan stood at the edge of the room watching the team, and I watched him watching the team, and he turned at exactly the wrong moment and caught me. And neither of us said anything, and he smiled, properly, fully, the first full smile I had seen from him in 3 weeks, and I looked away. The conversation happened on a Saturday. Not in the office. I had suggested the office, and he had said, sensibly, that the office was the problem location and we should find somewhere neutral. We met at a coffee place in Bandra, the kind that is busy enough on Saturday mornings to be anonymous and quiet enough in its back corner to actually talk. We talked for 2 hours. I want to tell you what was said because I think these conversations matter, and I think the way they are usually described in stories is wrong, too neat, too resolved, too much like a scene that was always going to end well. Real conversations about real things have false starts and corrections and moments where both people are saying something true that nonetheless seems incompatible with what the other person is saying. I told him about the power differential, the way I thought about it, what it meant to me that he worked for me and what the responsibilities of that were. He said he had thought about the same thing and had arrived at the same concerns through a different route, and had some ideas about how those concerns could be addressed structurally and professionally. He had clearly thought about this, really thought, in the specific Aryan way of working through a problem from all angles. I told him that I was not good at being uncertain, that I had spent years building something very deliberately, planning carefully, making decisions from a position of knowledge, and that this was a situation where I did not have full information and could not get full information in advance, and that this was uncomfortable for me in a way that went beyond the professional. He said, I know, I watch you work, you don't make a move until you understand the full board. Is that a criticism? I said. No, he said. It's why the company is where it is. I'm just saying I understand that this is different. There is no full board to understand in advance. There's just, he looked at his coffee, deciding whether the uncertainty is worth it. Is it? I said. He looked at me. For me it is, he said simply. I looked at my coffee. There are things that would need to change structurally, I said. In terms of reporting lines, in terms of how decisions about your career development are made. I know, he said, I thought about that. Ria could take over product direction oversight. You've already worked out the structure, I said. I work at a product company, he said. I design systems for a living. I almost laughed. What's funny, he said. You're the most practical romantic I've ever met, I said. He went very still for a moment. Did you just call me a romantic, he said. I said practical romantic, I said. But you used the word, he said. I used the word, I said. We looked at each other across the coffee table. I'm going to need some time, I said. Not to decide, I think I've already decided if I'm honest with myself, but to do this properly, to make the structural changes first, to make sure the professional is handled before the personal. How long, he said. 2 weeks, I said. He nodded. 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I said, we are colleagues, normal, professional. I can do that, he said. Can you, I said. He looked at me. I've been doing it for 9 months, he said. Right. Part 11, 2 weeks. The 2 weeks were, I will be honest with you, long. I moved quickly on the structural changes because I work quickly when I have clarity about the goal. Ria became the product direction oversight, which she handled with her usual efficiency and which Aryan reported to her on without any apparent difficulty. The change was logged, documented, made real. I told no one else on the team what it meant. That was appropriate, it was not their information. I focused on the work, the launch follow-up, the customer response analysis, the planning for what came next. The company was in the most exciting and most demanding phase it had been in, and the work had the particular quality it had always had: reliable, present, honest about whether you were doing it properly. On the 13th day, Divya came into my office and put a small plant on my desk, a different succulent, slightly larger. I looked at her. Yours is getting lonely, she said, pointing at Aryan's plant. That was from I started. I know who it was from, she said, I have eyes. She turned to leave. Divya, I said. She turned. The barbecue, I said, I'm not holding it against you, I want you to know that. She looked at me for a moment, something crossed her face that was complicated and genuine. I know, she said, thank you for the chance anyway. You earned it, I said, the work earned it. She nodded. The plant company is getting better, she said, that's all. She left. I looked at the 2 succulents on my desk. On the 14th day, I went to Aryan's desk. He looked up. 14 days, I said. He looked at me for a moment, careful, waiting. The structural changes are in place, I said. Everything is documented, the professional is handled. He waited. I'd like to get dinner, I said, not in the office kitchen, somewhere that's not the office. He looked at me for one more second. Then he said, I know a place. Part 12, what was built. 6 months after the barbecue. The company has 18 employees now. The product is in the hands of over 4,000 small businesses across 6 states, and the number goes up every week. The work is harder than it has ever been and better than it has ever been, and I come into the office every morning with the particular energy of someone who is exactly where they are supposed to be. Divya has been here for 4 months. She is good, genuinely good, earning her place every week in ways that have nothing to do with me. She had a conversation with my uncle last month and told him directly that she was working for her brother's company and that it was one of the best career decisions she had made. He had called me afterwards, slightly confused, and said he was very proud. I said thank you, I meant it. I also did not tell him about the potato salad because some things do not require the explicit accounting. They simply accumulate in the record. My grandmother came to visit in November. I showed her the office. She walked through every room with the thoroughness of someone who is deciding whether to approve, and at the end she held my face in both her hands and said the thing she had always said, my childhood nickname, the sound of being completely known by someone who has loved you your whole life, and I understood fully that the people who see you have always been there. Sometimes you have to stop managing the people who don't notice. Aryan and I take the long route home on Tuesdays. This is not a policy, not a plan. It emerged naturally the way real things do, from the fact that Tuesday evenings are usually when the week's most difficult work is behind us and the city is doing something worth seeing. We walk and we talk about the product and about the city and about things that have nothing to do with either, and occasionally about nothing at all. the particular comfortable silence of two people who have stopped needing to fill the space. He told me on one of these Tuesdays about the family he had grown up in, about the specific version of invisibility that was his, different from mine, shaped differently but recognizable in the way that certain kinds of loneliness are recognizable across different circumstances. I told him about the barbecue, the full version, the potato salad and Divya laughing and standing at the fence and breathing. He listened with the attention he brought to things that mattered. "What did you feel," he said, "at the fence?" I thought about it. "Tired," I said, and then clear, like the tiredness burned off and left something very simple underneath. "What was the simple thing?" "That the work was real," I said. "Whatever they thought, the work was real and it was mine." He was quiet for a moment. "That's it," he said, "that's the whole thing." "What is?" "The simple thing underneath," he said. "That's what I saw when I first looked at your company before I even met you. The work was real, someone had cared enough to make it real. That's not as common as it should be." I looked at the city around us. "Is that why you applied?" I said. "Yes," he said. "Not for the roles." "For the role because of the work," he said, "because of what the work said about the person who made it." I looked at him. "What did it say?" I said. He thought about it. "That they were the kind of person who cared more about whether the thing worked than whether the thing looked impressive," he said. "That's a rare quality, it's the quality I most want to be around." The city moved around us, warm and loud and ongoing. I looked at him, this person who had come into my company 8 months before the barbecue and had disagreed with my product decision in the first 7 minutes and had been right, who had fixed an architectural issue and filed it under minor improvements, who had turned down a competitive offer and said he had things he wanted to see through. This practical, precise, extraordinary person who had seen the work and through the work seen me. "Aryan," I said. "Yes," he said. "The succulent is still alive," I said. He looked at me for a moment. "I told you," he said. "You did," I said. We walked. Clapperboard final hook. They laughed at the barbecue. My uncle with his kind condescension, my cousins with their easy confidence, my sister who knew me, who laughed because it was easier than admitting what she felt. I stood at the fence and I breathed. 7 days later, Divya sent the resume. She did not know when she sent it what she was walking into. She did not know about the Series A or the 18 employees or the 4,000 businesses or the succulent on my desk or the Tuesday walks or the person who had seen the work and understood what it said. She knows now. And here is what I know. The work was always real, the life I was building was always real, the people who didn't see it were not the measure of it. The measure was the thing itself. The measure was always the thing itself. If this story found something true in you, if you have ever stood at a fence breathing, deciding like it, share it with someone who is still standing there and subscribe. Tell me in the comments, what did you build while someone was laughing? And one last question. There is a moment, 2 months after the Tuesday walks began, when something almost breaks, when a misunderstanding rooted in those early months of careful distance surfaces in a way that neither of us was ready for. And Aryan says something I did not expect, and I have to make a choice in about 30 seconds that changes everything. Should I tell you what almost undid everything? Part 2 is coming, eyes. Subscribe, you will not want to miss it. The Revenge Chronicles.